Hello, welcome to Africa Now. It's time. Had it been that the world was a tree, indeed, Africa was going to be the roots and the stem of it, and the rest of the world will be the branches and the leaves. On that pleasant note, welcome to Africa Now. It's time. I want to talk about something very tremendous, important, and more crucial that we need to look at when we view our motherland, Africa. Of course, we face a lot of challenges. Of course, there are a lot of things that happens, ups and downs. That's part of life. But if we do not sit down as Africans, if we do not sit down as individuals and look closely, we will always give other conclusions without deeper analysis. Now, I want us to look at how the whole world stands. As I mentioned earlier, that if we were going to describe the whole world as a tree or as a plant, the significance of Africa in the world was going to be the holding or the anchor of the whole world. Why do I say so? If we look way back, all the countries from the East, if we talk of Germany, if we talk of Japan, if we talk of Britain, if we talk of America, they came and drew their strength from Africa. They drew manpower. They took our people, they took Africans and took them to the West. And by so doing, they built their own nations using the manpower that came from Africa. If we talk of economic, on the economic sector, we can actually, sometimes people might not go deeper or take their time to analyze these things nicely. Today, we've got our African children who are suffering day in, day out. They are doing gold panning, but the result and the end of the matter is, it's not the African child that benefits from the gold panning, which our poor African children are suffering to do. They do the gold panning, they raise or they struggle even to make meat. They struggle to put food on their tables, yet all the gold they do panning and they do their illegal minings is indirectly taken to go and build other nations and other states which are far beyond. If it was way back, we have a traceable history of one of the most powerful leaders in the world of some long ago, centuries, called King Solomon. King Solomon, it is said, according to history, he was very connected to Africa. You never know. There was a time whereby the Queen of Ethiopia, the one who was called the Queen of Sheba, when she visited King Solomon, she visited King Solomon with some material and tangible things, because she heard that King Solomon was so wise. The way he governed his entire kingdom, it was outstanding and stunning. So the queen went to see how King Solomon was doing his thing. That's when the relationship between King Solomon and Africa began. When King Solomon realized that the woman was pretty, she was really an African queen, King Solomon, he had to impose a relationship on the Queen of Sheba. From then, they developed a more stronger relationship, and the two ended up in love. As you know, there was no woman who could pass by King Solomon himself. So the two, being in love, when the Queen of Sheba returned to Africa, it became a routine of King Solomon visiting Africa, Ethiopia precise. If we do our research very well as well, you will see that there was the mines of Ophir, or Ophir, I don't know how you pronounce it, Ophir. Those were the mines which were so common, that were mined by the King Solomon himself. It's been a long time up to now, but it is believed that the mines were located down in the southern part of Africa, because King Solomon and his people used to sail along the Indian Ocean, down the ocean, down here, up until you could reach the end of Indian Ocean, thereby connecting from the Cape Town in South Africa. Then he could take his journey from then and enter into the other part of Zimbabwe to a certain place called Masvingo. Masvingo, that's where was said there was a lot of gold. If you talk of Zimbabwe itself, there are some areas whereby there is a lot of gold. Almost each and every part of Zimbabwe there is gold. So King Solomon himself had his mines in that region of Masvingo, and some other mines which were later called the Wenera mines here in South Africa. So King Solomon would come and do his mining, take all his gold maggots and all the produces he could get from down south, from this area of and part of Africa, and take it through the sea and sail back to his kingdom. So we see it's not something that began today. It's something that started years and years and years and years back, from ancient time. And up to today, the system is still in place. People are still exploiting, taking gold, taking diamonds, taking everything, taking it up back to their own countries. But what is the problem? Is it that these guys who are behind or who are leading us in Africa, are they the ones with the fault? Is it because we're now so much divided? Divided we fall, as they say. If we are much united, that's why it has never been a successful thing to have a one-party state in the whole of Africa. I remember some time when Muammar Gaddafi wanted to do the joining hands with the other leaders from the southern part of Africa, the likes of Julius Nyerere at that time, Robert Mugabe, and the guys like Kamo's Banda. That could not succeed very well because the white guys would still come, intervene, and make some distractions. In other ways, they could cause conflicts between the parties we have and the ones which are opposing. Then things would not go well. Up to today, if you go to DRC Congo, there's always fighting and disputes because there is something which is being benefited. The more we continue being disunited, the more these guys will still continue to exploit and take everything out of our motherland, Mother Africa. But as I mentioned, like even from the heading of our channel itself, it says Africa Now, it's time. We need to sit down. It's only if you and me, the true African children, can unite and say,
Indeed.
Okay, we know and we see that things are not moving well, but the main thing, the biggest problem is because we are not united. If we start to unite and start taking down seriously and start teaching ourselves, how do we come up with a plan that will empower us Africans? Produces from Africa for the African children. Whatever we make from Africa for the African children. I know we might come up with one solid plan and start empowering Africa. Africa is rich, even if there have been decades and decades, things taken and looted and stolen from Africa. We still have a lot of resources here in Africa. We still have the land. More enough that we can, if we actually sit down and start teaching ourselves how to use our own resources, we can make Africa a better place. We still have that gold. We still have all that. We are the ones who are exposing it and selling it cheap to them. But let these guys who are in leadership positions consider the African children. Let us be given some chances to do the mining ourselves. No more Anglo-American mines in our nations. No more Anglo-Boer mines in our nations. This is our nation. This is Mother Africa. It belongs to us Africans. The more we start realizing and start analyzing, looking at the fact that we also need to benefit from this, us as African children, the earlier the better, that it may be of our own benefits as Africans. Just as I've mentioned, that Africa now, it's time we are going to take ourselves through a journey that is going to empower wisdom, empower knowledge, empower tangible evidences. Here in Africa, we are going to be posting videos every week. You will hear and see that if we unite, united we stand, divided we fall. Africa as one. We don't want anything to do with fighting each other as Africans. The Tutsis in Mozambique, let all that stop. The Matangas, everything that is opposing, all those things, what do you call those groups which are fighting the ruling party up there in Nigeria? Let all that stop. United we stand, divided we fall. Let's form a united Africa and start work towards the development of the African child. The African child deserves something much better than what we have today. We can do it. We can conquer. Even if the governments are not performing better, it's no longer the time to be looking at the government. We don't want to put the blames on the government. I'm not successful because my government is doing this. I'm not successful because I was not educated. I'm not successful because of this and that. Let us stop casting blames on whatever or whoever. Let us look at ourselves and admit that wherever we are from that position and from that point and moment. So we are going to start from there and start with our way up. Rome was not built in a day. China was once worse than even what we are today in Africa. So China is much more populated and they don't even have the land. But they started building their own nation. They started building their own economy. Look at America. America, whatever they do, they put America first. Whatever they say, they will say, God bless America. Whatever they do, they will be putting America ahead of them. Let's do the same. Let's unite as Africans. Let's stand and start building Africa. Like I said from the beginning, Africa, now it is time. Don't look at what happened yesterday. Don't look at what happened the day before yesterday. We have all the resources. If we are to build the restaurants here in Africa for the Africans, let's start doing it. Let's just learn how it is done. I'm glad nowadays it is the computer age. Everything is being published openly. You just have to have a connection, you have your computer, you have your phone, you have an Android phone. You get every information. Do researches. How can you do this? You get your own thing and start doing something. Thank you.